All right. Go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, October 15th meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do a quick roll call. Doesn't look like Commissioner Bowie's here. Commissioner Smith,
Present.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Present.
Vice Chair Fizer.
Present.
Looks like Secretary Peterman's not here. Commissioner Shanks,
Present.
Commissioner Akia,
Present.
Mayor Turnbow,
Present.
and Chairman Wiggins is here. So we've got 7 this evening to start. We have no personal appearances scheduled, so we'll move right along to item 5, our consent agenda. We have one item, item A, the approval of minutes from the September 17th, 2024 meeting. Entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr.
please.
Chair,
Yes, sir, Mr. Faulkner.
I move that we approve minutes from our September 17th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Faulkner, second by Commissioner Urquia to approve the minutes from the September 17th, 2024 meeting. Any discussion of the topic? Seeing none, all in favor? 6, oppose, and abstentions. 1, 601, thank you. We have no unfinished business, so we will move right along to item 7, new business. We have 4 items. We'll start with item A, case number 24013, Whitetail Run PUD and preliminary plan. This does require a public hearing, which I will open at this time, and I would ask the applicant or the city to please present the case.
So the applicant will come up and do a brief presentation. I'll take control of the commissioner screens while I bring this up, so give me 1 second.
Good evening, Matt Slish, Engineering Solutions, 50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit, Missouri. So we're here tonight to talk through hopefully the redevelopment or the resurgence of Whitetail Run. So down on 195th west of School Road, a development that started in the early 2000s with a single phase of about 60 single family lots down in that area. David and staff can tell you we've been on behalf of the developer in front of your staff many times over the last 4 or 5 years trying to find a fit for this project, trying to figure out ways that we could lay it out, things that we could do to try to figure out how to make the project a viable project. And so what we've come up with is a plan to essentially create a combination of housing types. All of them are single family. All they're doing is providing different opportunities for housing styles because there's essentially 500 lots out there. There needed to be an opportunity to create a different type of user that you'd be looking for in the different zones. So I'll walk through some of the ideas. So the developer that is purchasing and wanting to develop the property is Salee Development, a developer that has been in town through a second generation now, doing a multitude of development opportunities, single family, multifamily, commercial, and industrial across the entire nation. The projects that they work on are varied like any developer would be in the portfolio. They have some single family for rent. They have some townhome products. They have apartment projects. This project specific is a single family for sale product. There is no desire to have this as a hold. This developer will be developing these lots, selling the lots to a builder, let the builder then develop and build each of the lots, and it'll all be a single family for sale community. Go ahead and go to the next one. So as you start to look through, I pulled an idea, a little snippet of over the last 40 years, some of the single family residential developments that you'll see. Some of them are in town, some over there in Spring Hill, some are in Lee Summit, Blue Springs. You can go in any one of these subdivisions and find a quality product. In some of these subdivisions, the developer also was the builder. At this point, Tyler Salee is the main owner-operator of Salee Development. He is no longer doing the home building. He's just consistent or going to the developer side of it, developing these projects and developing and selling the lots. And so as you look through some of these projects have been projects that his dad would have gone in and developed and built some lots. This Whitetail project being the size that it is with a limited number of builders or a single builder in there, it would take a very long time to get through the project. And so this project will be developed in phases, sold to builders, let the builders come in and continue the development of the individual home sites. Go ahead to the next one. So then again, starting to talk about another portfolio option. Again, this project we're developing is single family, but as you look on their website for Salee, they do multifamily. You can go to the next one, I think, at this point. They do a number of other options, but just kind of talking through the project and the knowledge or the wealth of knowledge they have in the development side of it. So as we start to look at the project and the location of the project on the far south end of Raymore, just to the east of I-49, kind of in that area where some of the Raymore Commerce Center has been developing, kind of in this area of town that's kind of continued to develop, getting down towards the school, just for a perspective of where we are. Go ahead to the next one. So again, the site currently is zoned R1. So we looked at it, we went through and tried to have a conversation with staff of, if we went to an R1 type of development, what could we do? What would be the options that we have? So as you look into an R1 development, the lot is 70-foot minimum by 100-foot deep with a minimum square footage of 8,400 square foot. It'll be important to understand the numbers of those because we generally stayed in all three of our classifications of home styles we want, similar to the R1. The only one we couldn't make work with this development was your R1 standards say that we need a 10-foot side yard. We need a 30-foot front and we need a 30-foot rear. Well, as you start to find different buyers that are out there, some of them still want that. Some people like to have the bigger yard, but some people don't. Some people are like the yards that have less maintenance to take care of. Some people don't care as much about having the front yard, rear yard. They like to have the communal space to go out and have an activity space on that side of it. So as we went through and we looked at essentially redeveloping Whitetail Run with the original preliminary plat, there were 500 lots generally in this R1 single family development, and we went through many iterations of it. The problem we ran into is every time we got to it with a 70 by 100 or 70 by 120 or whatever we kind of came up with, it created the same buildable box on almost every lot. And so it got to the point where we had concerns that we were going to get stuck with just like Whitetail Phase 1 did, where it would be the same type of home, the same type of buyer, and that pool is just not large enough to absorb 500 individual single-family lots. So then we started talking to staff, and like I said, you can ask David, we were here for probably 4 years with different ideas and options of coming back and forth of what we came up with. We looked at the base option zonings of R1P. We looked through the ideas of what could you do. Well, the problem with R1P is, again, now you start to set one single side yard setback, one single front yard setback. So even if we ask for a reduction, it doesn't make any changes or any required changes throughout the development. We could essentially create a reduced setback development in an R1P, but it wouldn't force the builders to have to go in and create different buildable types. So we came through and came up with the idea of doing a PUD. Still going to be single family, and all that it's going to allow us to do is that in each of our 3 building zones, it allows us to change the side yard, the front yard, and the rear yard, establish a certain number of lots that'll be in that area, establish the area that those specific home types would go in, and control the development in the sense of how we think it can be productive and continue to thrive. So this is what we were just saying on the size of the lots, of essentially the original Whitetail Run that was under that orange development had the exact same number of lots, or within a number, 1 or 2 of what we are currently showing with the original PDP or original preliminary plat that was done back in early 2000s. So we came up with what we're calling this kind of breakdown of 3 different zones. So the yellow zone is the zone that we're calling Whitetail Phase 2. It is going to be and planned to be similar sized lots, actually a little bit deeper and larger than some and most of the lots in Whitetail Phase 1. Similar character, similar size, similar piece. We actually modified our original plan after our neighborhood meeting, as some of the residents originally on the east side of Elk, we had those as our villa product. Some of the residents asked that we create kind of a safe area around their development that is exactly the same lots as they did. So when we came back to the city revision, now all that yellow surrounding all of Whitetail Phase 1 is very similar style lots. So as you look up to that side of it, it's 72 by 130 minimum. The only thing we want to change is we don't want a 10-foot side yard in that area. We're asking for a 7. The reason we're asking for 7 is we build all over the metro. So most cities have a 7-foot, 7.5-foot side yard setback. A 10-foot side yard setback is kind of the outlier, and we're not seeing a lot of buyers that desire to have that larger setback. On those lots in the yellow, they can build and have more side yard if they wanted to have it based on what they'll have. They'll have large enough lots. But the lots in the yellow would all comply with an R1 current zoning district from area, size. The only change we would ask for is that side yard difference from a 7 to a 10. The villa section then, that's kind of on that east side. Villa is kind of an odd name. Obviously, it's just you can use it for many things. You can use it for seniors, you can use it for the slab homes, you can use it for ranches. Essentially, what we're trying to describe in that area is that we believe that would be more of a single story, reverse story and a halves, main floor living type environment is what we believe the villa would be. There is a reduction in what we think the house square footage would be in that area slightly. The lot sizes are brought down a little bit. The side yards are brought down a little bit. Our opinion in that area is that is the people that don't have as big of a concern on the yards. They don't have a concern of wanting to own and maintain it. It may be your older adults that are now kid-free. It may be your younger professionals that are just starting out and don't have the kids that are running around. But as you'll notice, all of the villa section is flanked by a large amount of park and open space area that can be utilized for them to have activities and places to go, as opposed to just using their yard like you may on a larger style lot. Then the south end that we have down there is what we're calling the Summit. The Summit is essentially a larger style lot. It is essentially the same as what we said in the Whitetail Phase 2. The only difference is we're allowing a 70-foot wide lot versus 72, and we're allowing a 25-foot front yard and a 25-foot backyard. So again, in the Summit, the lot width, the lot depth, the lot area would all meet your R1 criteria. The only changes in that zone would just be, again, the setbacks and locations of it, which in our opinion, buyers that are out there today aren't as desiring that larger lot in that larger area. But again, everything in that Summit is flanked on the west and the south by a common space or open space that is never to be developed in that area. From a plan perspective, we've met with the Parks Department, and that center core area underneath the high lines and that green space is about 20 acres. That would be dedicated to the park, and the park would be developing a new park facility in there. So I think that we're going to provide on Elk a couple parking spaces to provide access to it. We're going to provide a trail along the east side of Elk that would get them from 195th, but essentially that would allow them to interconnect their park trail system that goes to the north to that area. As part of our neighborhood meeting, originally we had a pool planned up in that kind of southeast corner of where Phase 1 Whitetail currently existed. The neighbors asked us to move that pool facility, so we've moved it down now to the center part, kind of in the Summit, down in the southerly part of our lot, just kind of out of the way, again, so that any community members that use it don't cause a ruckus or a problem to any of the neighbors that exist in Phase 1. Go ahead. So as we kind of go through each of the phases, we'd like to try to give you a breakdown of what we project and want the lot numbers to be. So you can see in the Phase 2, we're projecting we'll have 130 single-family lots in that phase and that style. Generally, that encompasses about 45 acres of the 185-acre development. Our estimated sales price in that area is $410 to $500, depending on whether you finish a basement, depending on whether you put the third car on. There's a lot of variations in that side of it. And then generally, you're given some house sizes from 1,500 to 2,400 square foot without the finished basement, or basically 22 to 2,500 square foot with a basement. So someone could build a larger home in any of those areas or any of those lots, but that's just kind of what we're seeing as a projection based on the current cost per square foot to build a home, the valuation of the existing homes in the area, and how that area we expect to develop. Go to the next one. Then if you go down to the Summit, now there's 175 single-family lots down in that Summit area, again encompassing about 53 acres. You see the pool facility up in there. Again, we still expect these prices will be very similar to what Whitetail has right now, that $410 to $500. It seems like currently, and obviously just as everybody's seen in the market demand getting above $500,000 and $600,000 is starting to struggle. The market demand at $400,000 to $500,000 seems to be the right spot right now. A development of this size obviously will go through some building iterations of time, so we expect those numbers to continue to go up as time would go on and development would continue. Again, similar style houses, again, depending on whether or not they build 3 cars or 2 cars, they build the finished basement or not, or how the pieces go. But this would be your 2 stories. This would be your reverse story and a half. This would be your probably not too many ranch style plans just based on the topography out there, but could be a ranch style plan on any one of those lots. And then if we go into the villas, again, the villas then is on that east side, and as you see, we've broken that up to about 190 maintenance provided type lots up in that area, 57 acres. Price point's probably $380,000 to $440,000, again, depending on a lot of things, but we're shrinking the square footage on those a little bit because we believe that that area and that product is going to be more of your empty nesters, your young professionals. You know, you hate to say that that's a first-time home purchase at this time of life, but that may be your first-time home purchase in these prices of where we are now. So it's kind of, that's going to be that side of the development as it goes. Go ahead and go to the next one. There's a number of amenities that we're still working on as you go through the system. So what we know for certain is there will be the pool, there will be the clubhouse, there will be the playgrounds, there will be the trail, there will be the dedication of the 20 acres of the parks for them to build their park facility. There will be a number of other amenities, whether it be gazebos, benches, and things that will interconnect throughout the development as we kind of continue to work on this. But it's an active outdoor space to provide the community some connection. And again, with the Parks Department that has a trail that goes to the north, it creates the beginning of the south end of the trail for the park system as it goes to the north. So we tried to pull some variations of house styles and types and pieces in there. There is nothing set by any means of what the specific house that would be built out there. We were asked at the neighborhood meeting some of the questions about specifically the homes. These are the homes that we see getting built in the metro area. That will continue to change and evolve as the demand and the desire of whatever they are, but these have been some high quality products that have been selling in the market. You can, next one. Again, then you have a 2-story type plan with a 3-car garage, and the pieces of it, you're seeing 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 2,400 square feet, 2,000 square feet without a finished basement, so add on another 400 or 500 square foot if you finish the basement on any one of those units in that side. The builder expects that everything in there will be of hardy board or likeness for the siding side of it. We don't expect that there'll be any vinyl siding. We don't expect to see much of the panel board, as we're not finding much of the panel board that's working anywhere in town. So hardy board has been a product that the builder has found that he likes in the area and continues to use. So we believe it's a high quality product. We believe that the stone accents and the pieces that will be added to it will provide a high quality looking material down in that, or project down in that area. So it's just to try to take some pictures and see some of the houses getting out of the renderings. These are actually built homes that we took up in a subdivision in the area up in Platte City. And then you can start to see some of the interior finishes of what they look like. They're all solid surface countertops. They're all, you know, standard hardwoods and mixtures of uses on the floor tilings and the pieces of it. You can continue on. Again, just some more representations of what the bedrooms may look like or the kitchen areas. So with that, we had a neighborhood meeting middle of September on the 18th. We came with a plan that had some variations on this that we believe that we took and understood the comments probably of 20 plus neighbors or so that we had here. So we had a great turnout. I think some of them are here to talk to you today. Most of the comments in that area were concerns on what was going to be built, whether it was going to be multifamily and that the zoning district was going to allow it. David will explain it to you. We're exactly the same way. This is a single family for sale product only. There is no changing, there is no bringing something in and changing it later. The point of the PUD helps the city have some more teeth in their control of their zoning that locks in that this is what we want to have. So if we went back to like the idea of doing like an R1P wouldn't lock down areas or zones of where you'd build certain types of houses. You'd have a mixture of some houses here and some houses there. It would kind of be a blanket across for a zoning. That's why, again, as we've worked through this over the last 3 or 4 years, the PUD provided us an ability to create a project that we think can be successful in town, given the opportunity to get going. Some of the ideas and conversations in there were this being consistent with existing Whitetail 1. We believe that it is. We believe that the lots in Whitetail 1, we believe the lot styles, we believe lot values or home values in there will be very consistent with what's built, especially in Whitetail Phase 2 that we're showing, or in the Summit. The villas may be a little bit smaller product, but still it's going to be complementary, and we've, at their request, moved all of the villas to the east side of the site to get out of the way. So I think with that, Salee representative is here. I'm here. We can answer any questions you guys may have as we work our way through it.
Thank you, sir. Do members of the commission have any questions for the applicant before we jump into the city report? All right, Mr. Grant. Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Shanks.
Can you explain to me how the existing HOA and the restrictions that they have in place will impact the expansion project? Will they still be under the same HOA? Will those bylaws still be in effect?
I would say, I think Mr. Zerr about to say that doesn't really affect the Planning and Zoning Commission, but
Unrelated issue. It's
Okay.
a separate standing on its own HOA, the current one.
Okay. Because when we started talking about those, countertops and the hard east, I just didn't know if those materials were something that really applied to us, or was that more of an HOA issue? That's,
yeah.
It's neither. From your perspective, you're here to review and analyze the rezoning application for it. The countertops, the interiors, they are all representative of what the applicant believes will go in there, but don't have any reliance upon it, nor does it have a direct impact upon your decision-making process this evening.
okay.
Good?
I think I'm done.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Gress, sir.
Thank you, sir. As Mr. Slitch indicated, the request tonight is simply for the PUD rezoning and the preliminary plan. As the commission knows, with the PUD, the zoning request is filed coincident under the same application with the actual development plan that they are proposing here this evening. The existing zoning, as the applicant mentioned, is currently R1 single family, going to a proposed PUD planned unit development. Some of the surrounding area surrounding this property, zoning and uses, to the north you have generally agricultural zoning, school with Bridle Ridge Elementary and the public use there, in addition to some large lot residential homes that are within the county, not within the city. To the south, you have primarily, and to the east, primarily large lot residential homes, more agricultural, and again, not within the city, within unincorporated Cass County. And then to the west, you have a mix of existing R1 single family with the Whitetail Run subdivision that's currently existing, as well as agricultural land that is currently as well not in the city as well. Overall, with the development, and I'll kind of get into the details of the different pods that the applicant mentioned, but in total, the tract is about 185 acres. They are proposing a total of 503 lots for a general density of the development of 2.71 dwelling units per acre throughout the entire development. Because tonight did require a public hearing, we did advertise tonight's meeting in the September 25th edition of the North Cass Herald for tonight's meeting. Some of the history and the past planning actions I wanted to go through on this particular site. The land area that encompasses all of Whitetail Run, including the developed portion, was originally annexed in the city in 2005. It was rezoned from its agricultural to an R1 single-family residential district at the same time. The preliminary plat for the Whitetail subdivision was also approved within that same year in 2005, after the approval of the zoning was in place. That original preliminary plat included an original 564 single-family lots for the entirety of what constitutes Whitetail Run, which is the existing portion and the piece we're here to talk about tonight. The first plat was approved by the city in 2006, which included 60 lots that all of which have been built today within that existing subdivision. So within the remaining portion of what is unbuilt, what was remaining in that plan at the same time under the previously approved plan was 504 additional lots that could have been built under the R1 district under the previous development plan that was approved back in the early 2000s. The city council on 4 different occasions provided extensions to that preliminary plat due to ongoing development efforts to try and do something with it. In 2014, though, they elected to not keep that preliminary plat valid, and that's when it expired in the city. So to date, there is no approved development plan for Whitetail Run. But again, the remaining portion of what we're here to talk about tonight is generally consistent in terms of the lot count. 504 lots were initially planned for this phase back in 2005. The applicant is proposing 503 lots on the same piece of property. As we mentioned in the presentation, the Good Neighbor meeting was held on September 17th of this year. We did have a fair amount of residents that attended that meeting, and included in your packet is a summary of the questions that were asked at that meeting, as well as the answers that were given by staff. One of the things that the applicant mentioned is they did make several revisions in terms of the locations of some of the lots that they have proposed, that in order to provide the buffer between what is being proposed and the existing Whitetail Run. The relocation of the pool was another change that they made to accommodate some of those requests. And so staff looked pretty closely at their resubmittal following that Good Neighbor meeting and made sure that everything that was asked by the neighbors was accommodated to the best that they could. So again, that summary is included in your packet, and I'm happy to answer anything that the applicant didn't already cover in their kind of summary of their development. What I wanted to point out in your staff report would be on page 3, which is the existing and the proposed development standard table. So on the left-hand side, you have what the existing R1 zoning development standards are, and then under the proposed PUD, as the applicant mentioned, the reasoning for the PUD zoning deals specifically with the 3 different lot types that they are requesting this evening, specifically located in the areas in which they've shown on that preliminary plat. Before I get too far into the details of that, what I wanted to kind of point out just for a reference and kind of a comparison would be this would be probably the largest project, that preliminary plat, that the city has seen in a couple of years. But in terms of comparison to something somewhat similar, if you subtract the golf course out of Creekmore is the city's largest PUD, but if you subtract the golf course amenity out of that, you essentially have the Westbrook subdivision, the Eastbrook subdivision, the Edgewater subdivision, the Cunningham subdivision. Each of those comes with its own specific lot type. And so that lends itself very similar to what the applicant is requesting here this evening. Instead, they've called those the Whitetail Run Phase 2, Whitetail Villas, Whitetail Summit. And so very consistent with how the city has dealt with that type of request before, when you're trying to identify the specific areas on a larger piece of land of, we want this size over here with this home style, this size over here. So in general, very consistent with how the city has handled a PUD request in the past, as we talked about maybe a R1P or R1.5 or other zoning districts. The PUD does allow for the city to have a little bit more control over monitoring the number of lots that they're proposing, where they're being put, where they're being developed, and how we track that over time as this subdivision would build out over time. As the applicant mentioned, in terms of kind of comparing some of the development standards, they are in general very similar to what is currently in place with the R1 zoning district. The bulk of some of the changes that they've asked for would be some of the reductions in those setbacks. So in general, the lot sizes actually exceed what the minimum standard would be for the 8,400 square foot minimum for each of the lot types, except for the Whitetail Villas, which is at 8,190 square feet. So the bulk of those deviations in the PUD would occur with the setbacks that would accommodate the different home types, the yard sizes, and the setbacks that some of their potential clientele or future residents might be looking for in this potential subdivision. So in general, the proposed PUD is consistent with what was approved with the original preliminary plat in terms of the number of lots that are being proposed. The street layout is generally similar here. We've made a couple modifications, which I will touch on here later in the staff report. We did share this request with the school district and had a lengthy discussion about, obviously with Bridle Ridge right across the street, 500 homes in that district within any time frame was obviously cause for discussion. There were no concerns from the school district with regard to capacity about their ability to handle more students. The one concern that they shared had to do with the potential for more students in the area crossing 195th Street, was to find a way to make that safer. So currently out there is a crosswalk that exists. I think it's kind of mid-block as you go west on 195th Street. So as part of this, we have worked with the applicant to kind of facilitate a conversation with the school district. They will be required to kind of improve that crosswalk with potentially some flashing beacons or some type of elevated, improved, not physically elevated, but improved crosswalk to increase the safety at the request of the school district. So I know they met last week and kind of tried to finalize some details of what that looks like, but staff would recommend that be required as part of the first phase of development to accommodate whatever kids might be in that subdivision now and what kids might be generated with any new development in the subdivision. Included in your packet was an aerial map overlaid the proposed development. And the reason we included that is that there are several mature trees throughout the subdivision. Many of those are located within what will be the parkland area, so those will obviously be preserved as the city looks to develop that property in the future. One of the things that came up in the Good Neighbor meeting were the existing trees, and there's a couple photos in your staff report in your packet of the eastern property line of this development, the western property line that abuts Cass County. Or no, I'm sorry, it would be the eastern property line. There's a mature tree line that separates basically what is the city limits and the county. There was a request at that meeting that those trees be preserved. There was some question on where the property lines were even at. So in the MOU, we'll see that that is a requirement to preserve those trees. There's no reason for any land disturbance to be going on over there anyway. So staff did support the request there to make sure that those get preserved. The one thing that is different about the development here from the previous project would be that on the south end of the development, there's about a 40-acre tract of land that's heavily treed. It's primarily in the floodplain, primarily undevelopable. There's not a lot you can do with that. That was originally included as part of the original Whitetail subdivision, just as a buffer. There was never supposed to be any development there. It is now owned by somebody else, so that is not part of the application this evening. But I just wanted to point out it is primarily floodplain, so there's really nothing that could be developed there in the future anyway, outside of just keeping it the treed buffer that it is. From the public works standpoint, Mr. Salisbury was unable to attend this meeting, but him and I caught up a little bit this week on some things. A couple things I wanted to point out. The 195th Street on the Transportation Master Plan is a major collector. Elk Drive through the neighborhood, which is the main thoroughfare, is also a minor collector. Everything else within the subdivision is going to be a standard local road. Elk Drive is classified as a greenway, which means a 5-foot sidewalk is required on one side. There's an existing trail on the east side of Elk Drive, which will be required to be continued all the way down through the subdivision as an amenity and provide the connectivity to the park area like the applicant mentioned. In general, one thing that I did want to point out, generally with preliminary plats, we do require a traffic study. They submitted one originally with this project in 2005, and staff reviewed that pretty heavily. We felt that there has been no additional development in this area since 2005, and the findings of that were still consistent with what staff would have expected anyway. The turn lanes into the subdivision have already been completed at Elk Drive. The applicant is proposing a second entrance into the subdivision, which will require the same type of turn lane improvements when that connection is made. In addition to that, the only extra improvement that we worked on was the crosswalk to accommodate pedestrians trying to cross either for school or to the trail. And then in general, the proposed development is not in the city's water territory, so it will not be served by city water. The applicant has been working with Water District 10 to get everything in place for them to be able to serve the project. And then in general, some of the concerns that we had at the Good Neighbor meeting were just generally on connectivity and traffic. I wanted to remind the commission here, as you may be familiar, currently Dean Avenue is hopefully starting construction soon, which will be extended through kind of the Commerce Center down to 195th Street. So it will provide a new connection that wasn't originally part of this development of the city to better facilitate transportation out of this area. Portions of 195th Street will also be widened with that project. That was part of the MoDOT grant that the city received last year to facilitate some of those improvements. I wanted to touch on the parkland. The applicant and staff did meet with the Park Board in September of this year to figure out how the Park Board best wished to serve this area in terms of the parkland dedication requirement. Based on the proposed development and the number of units, 25 acres is required. The developer is proposing, as they mentioned, approximately 22 acres over the 2 tracts of land, which was really at the request of the Park Board. As the commission knows, we just are kind of wrapping up our comprehensive plan. The Park Board was a huge part of that and tried to identify where they want to secure parkland. The Park Board has had a pretty distinct vision for this area as kind of a passive/active recreation area within that park, kind of getting the amenity of the parking spaces that doesn't require a parking lot of itself. So the request for that specific area was at the request of the Park Board to keep that in our comprehensive plan of wanting that specific area in this project. So the applicant obviously agreed to do that. Because that is only 22 acres, there is a delta there that has to be made up with a combination of the fee in lieu. So they will also be required to pay just under $62,000 over time to accommodate the difference of that. That is obviously collected as phases of the project is built. And then, as I mentioned, the bigger thing here would be the 10-foot trail on Elk Drive. As the commission also probably knows, on the north side of 195th, the city has about 154 more acres of future parkland, which will be developed at some point in the future. So this 10-foot trail along Elk Drive provides the connectivity from this area of the city out of Whitetail Run up to that park, which then eventually gets park users further north in the city. So it provides really good connectivity through this parkland amenity, the trail, up to future city parkland and so forth. Overall, the alignment with the comprehensive plan, I kind of touched on that. Generally the same. The future land use map identifies this as appropriate for low-density residential single-family housing, which is generally what is being proposed here this evening. The streets within the proposed subdivisions align with what the transportation master plan has required, and the trail connections are being provided to meet the goals of the open space plan. The one thing I wanted to go back to that we did that is generally not in alignment with the transportation plan, if you look on the aerial map, originally the transportation plan has a connection that would eventually require Elk Drive to connect over to School Road. During the Good Neighbor meeting, that was a request that those homes along School Road are not likely to ever redevelop or be sold, so there's no need to have that connection over to School Road. And so that was eliminated. The transportation plan does say that it should be provided, but with the request at the Good Neighbor meeting and the likelihood that that ever were to connect, staff did recommend that that connection be removed. So that's what you see in your packet this evening. Also within your packet is going to be the staff proposed findings of fact for the request this evening. Happy to answer any questions on those. Overall, as I mentioned, generally consistent with what the vision has been for this area of the city. Staff does recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the staff proposed findings of fact and forward the case to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. Two things I wanted to note on the conditions of that recommendation. The street names, those are always required to be submitted with the preliminary plat. The applicant did provide the revisions that we requested, but we found a few more errors that still need to be hashed out so that they're in conformance with the addressing policy. Nothing that needs to be figured out today, but we'll need that by the time this proceeds forward to City Council. And then in addition to that, one thing that we came across would be the phasing for the project. As the applicant mentioned, from their first iteration, based on some of the changes that they made from the Good Neighbor meeting, they did switch up some of the lot types and their location. One thing that staff noticed in our review, what we've kind of figured out in the discussions we've had with the fire district and just general construction access overall, we would recommend that the phasing plan be amended either to include the new access road onto 195th Street as part of phase one, or if they wish to push that off later to a different phase, staff would require that a construction road be built through the undeveloped portion of Whitetail Run to limit and restrict construction traffic on Elk Drive. That road, obviously, it's a residential use right now. There's plenty of land to accommodate a construction road as this subdivision would be developing, but it provides that secondary access into the subdivision for safety purposes and then limits any construction traffic from being through the existing portion of the neighborhood. So again, conclude my staff report. Happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gress. Do any members of the commission have any immediate questions before we jump into the public hearing? And then obviously we will have our formal discussion after that. But if there's any immediate questions for David, I want to make sure that those were answered. Okay, seeing none. Okay, so that moves us into our public hearing portion, which I did open at the beginning of the meeting. We do invite any members of the public to come forward and speak on whatever you would like. We do request that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Please state your name and your address for the record. And then if somebody has a similar comment that somebody else had, instead of just basically saying the same thing again, just say, kind of dittos. So the public hearing is open, and if you are interested in coming to say something, please come forward to the mic and limit your comments to 5 minutes. And again, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, guys and ladies. I live at 8202 Archer. My name's Sean Fuss. Basically, the southern half of Raymore is the area that we're talking about. It's already been zoned R1 back in 2005. As you all know, the recession hit in 2008, which is another reason why the development initially failed. It wasn't because of what was being built, it's just pure economics. With that being said, that is the last viable area for Raymore to expand in a nice residential subdivision. Those houses out there are not 1,485 square foot. They're not on slabs. Based on what was on that slideshow tonight, would any of you pay $400,000 for a 1,400 square foot slab house? It's already R1. We don't need a PUD. Based on what was put up by the developer, they've never completed 500 homes. So who's going to finish it? Most subdivisions get started, you go through phase 1, they go through multiple developers. Those developers change. They have the freedom to do that with the PUD. Yes, the city does have a little bit more control that they're able to do, but in the end, R1 restricts it. It was R1 for a reason. There's a house across the street, it's $1 million home. You think he wants to look at 1,400 square foot slab homes, considering a villa. Now we'll go to the next thing. Whitetail One has had the F-Tank law firm file for separation from that expansion. So technically, those 60 homes have their own covenant that has just been passed, a new one, and has been filed by the F-Tank law firm, which I'm sure you're all aware they've been Raymore staple for years. If this board decides to approve this, they need to come up with their own name. They need to come up with all of their own things. Trying to piggyback on something else when you have all these established homes that are a minimum 2,500 square foot to 4,000 square foot is not in any of those pictures. When we originally saw some of those pictures, there weren't 3 cars on those. But I implore you guys, do we really need the POD? It's R1 residential. What are you giving away to get that? That's the last prime area to be developed. It's close to the Rapex schools. It's close to Vital Ridge. Put subdivisions out there that are based on Raymore's history. There's all kinds of areas across 58 where they could throw in 150 slab homes. Okay, there's apartments that have went in there for beginner homes, or residential homes for empty nesters, or whatever was put forth. Don't want it, don't want to see it. Most people here don't. There's no reason for it. Leave it R1. 5-foot side lots are insanely small. That puts it 10 foot from one house to the other. It's a basketball goal. The argument was at the Good Neighbors meeting, well, people don't want to mow their yard. Does 2 passes with a regular 22-inch lawnmower really matter? I mean, honestly, let's ask yourself, how lazy are they? If it's a development that you're trying to add 525 homes because you think the industrial park is going to bring that in, look at Chewy, look at some of the other ones. Do any of those residents actually live in that community or those areas, or are they all coming down from the city? Increased truck traffic, increased traffic in front of the schools. Who's going to monitor the catwalk to have elementary kids going up it? What's that going to cost the school district? Looking at the tax revenue from those type of homes. Do you have to pay for a crossing guard? What's the purpose? If it's really not that much different from an R1, leave it an R1. Make him put the bigger lots in. If you go back and look what was proposed in 2005, that's actually 40 or 50 less homes. Make the bigger lot. If they say they'll pull the plug on a project, they weren't going to finish it anyway. In all actuality, look at statistics. Were they? Have they? Has anybody else? Your questions were valid. Although it's not for this meeting. We don't want it. They're not part of us anyway. So thank you for your guys' time.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Scott Von Baron, 917 Doe Drive. I'm not going to repeat what he said because he pretty well spoke for a lot of us. But I do want to point out the lot sizes are a concern, but the bigger concern is the style of housing that's going to go in there. I mean, I sent a letter to the city council the other day, and I pointed out that during life you have a starter home, and then you might have a second home, and then you go to the next level. You're always wanting to get better. Everybody out there has worked their way through their life to get to a better lifestyle, a better home, a better subdivision. That's what existing Whitetail Run is for all of us. We moved, my wife and I moved from Belton because there wasn't anything in Belton that was the next level up. I don't need a Creekmore. I don't need Mission Hills, but this was a very good quality subdivision with good quality homes, with the amenities that we needed. And the houses that were pictured at the public here, at the Good Neighbor meeting, were different from this one, but even these are not the same material, the same look, and the same feel of the existing neighborhood. I don't think there's anybody that's against development, but it needs to be the right development. My concern also is the traffic. You know, it was talked about a traffic study. Well, I don't know how that accounted for the 1 million square foot buildings that are now going to be neighbors to us that we couldn't do anything about when we get the Commerce Center built. All that traffic's going to be going up and down that road too. We've been told, well, it's not going to be truck traffic. Well, there's going to be employees going up and down that road, and now we're going to put 500 more houses out there. I just think I think there's things we could look at a little different to make it more palatable for the existing homeowners and for future use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Valerie Riley. I live at 911 Coyote. And one of my concerns is the definition of PUDs, and that it says here, what I looked up, land uses such as housing, recreation, commercial centers, and industrial parks. And if something happens that they don't get these houses built, and it is already zoned PUD, are we possibly looking at somebody putting in more commercial buildings that close to our houses?
No, ma'am.
Well, the whole definition of PUD says that they could, that it could be, you know, industrial use and commercial use. So I think that's something, because, I mean, they didn't get to finish it in the first place. Our economy is not in a good shape right now. So to think there's going to be 500 people out there wanting to buy houses that are of lower quality than where we live is kind of, I think, short-sighted. So that is a big concern that I have, that if you really look at the PUD and what it says, I mean, I understand the progressive attitude of trying to, you know, get planned communities and all of this, but I think that that needs to be thought about, because if they aren't able to go forward and they aren't able to get enough sales to go to phase 2, phase 3, whatever they're doing, you know, what could happen to our land if it's rezoned PUD?
Thank you.
Just wanted to maybe clarify a comment, if I could, on the PUD zoning designation before we get any further. Just to kind of compare other uses of that. The resident here was correct that PUD can be used for a multiple variety of land uses in the city, but the way that it was applied for it is a single-family PUD. So even if this, you know, hypothetically, if it's approved and the development doesn't go through, it remains a single-family PUD. There's no likelihood or any chance that it would ever be anything other than a single-family subdivision. Any changes to that PUD would go back through this same process if it were to go to another developer in the future. So I just wanted to dispel that, because the PUD zoning designation is unique in the sense that can accommodate a mixture of uses. We have those elsewhere in the city, but the specific PUD tonight is strictly a single-family subdivision.
Piggybacking on that, if I might, it will all be subject to your development agreement, which you have a copy of. The subject of this, or the development agreement itself, makes specific reference to being applicable to all successors and assigns, which means if there's a future developer that comes into that location, they are subject to the same development agreement, which gets recorded as a public record in the Recorder of Deeds office in Cass County.
Thank you both for that clarification. Sir?
I'm Stephen Raleigh. I'm from 911 also, Coyote. It's my wife Valerie that spoke. I don't see if it's residentially zoned now. The PUD, I don't understand why you'd want to revamp it, except that you want to make it for all types and possibilities. And I think that so far, Raymore's been developing nicely, and I do respect planning boards. I see things that they do when they say no, and later on the years unwind, and you see great things come from that. I once was a young man and tried to develop something more than I should have been developed, and later on I saw it was good planning that saw that, you know, I didn't need a variance, that it really wasn't able to go where I was just a young man doing a few things. But so I see the benefit of this community growing, and at the same time I understand the business people want to make as much as they can, okay, on the units. But I see this as definitely not something that I'm for, because I live in the neighborhood and I just moved in a year and a half. I've been in there, and it's the first time I'm in an HOA, home ownership, process. So that's all new to me. But it's a wonderful neighborhood, wonderful community, and the schools. And I did find out that the further expansion of Whitetail Run didn't occur because of finances. That doesn't mean that, anyway, that we need to maximize it into some other format of zoning. So I'm for keeping the zoning. It was zoned properly by good planning, I think, from previous design of Raymore, and I think it should be upheld to. And I still think that the profit can be made by building, in the way it was designed originally. I don't think it has to maximize units. I understand all that from college. We can maximize units. The more units I get in, the better. I've seen some buildings that have, 20 units, 30 units in them now. When I was a young man working in construction, we put 8 apartment buildings with 8 units. 8 was a lot. We thought that was a good, it's much better now. So I'm just saying that I'm not for it. That's my position. And I think if it's already zoned single-family dwelling, well then use that. Use that and develop according to that and benefit that in that way. And I think that, you'll accommodate things better, and it'll be a better city in the long run for everybody. So I understand both sides of this, but I'm not for it. I don't see the benefit. And I do see it could become a problem out on at 195 for the school. I like how the other school, the high school, doesn't have a lot around it. The kids can get in and out of there, and people can get in and out of there. And the road gets a little, I say that the traffic's a little more than we're saying here with the industrial development that's happening down the street. So, and I don't even know that everybody in industrial development doesn't necessarily want to live right up the street from where they work. So that was said a little bit earlier from some of the other gentlemen. They might be traveling in to actually work in industrial development. So that's my position. I just wanted to make myself heard. And I came because the last meeting I didn't make, I wasn't available to come, and I heard about this, and so we made an effort to come, me and my wife. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There's no limit on comments, so if anybody else would like to come, you are welcome to. Okay, very good. One more chance, otherwise I will close the public hearing. All right, very good. We will close the public hearing. It is 6:52. And with that, I now ask members of the commission to inquire with either staff or developer. Anything you have?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
I have a question, David. The difference between the R1 and the R1 PUD that is being proposed here this evening, would R1 only restrict the building of homes exactly in the form that presently exists?
To answer your question, in terms of the construction of the home itself, no. The city generally does not limit or regulate what a home looks like or how it's constructed from a standard standpoint, yes. But from the architecture style of a home or the size of it, the number of bedrooms, the city doesn't regulate that. So the homes that that were on the screen this evening could be built in this subdivision, in the existing Whitetail Run, in generally any subdivision in the city. What the city regulates is the zoning. So you can only build a single-family home in this subdivision. You can build an apartment in our apartment zoning designations. You can build a warehouse in our industrial zoning designation. So that's what the city regulates, is the type of home, not the style. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we do not.
So what is the advantage of the PUD over the existing zoning?
The PUD, the advantage of that leans back to what the applicant mentioned in terms of defining the 3 different areas of the development they're trying to provide these 3 different lot types. As I explained in the staff report, the lot sizes themselves are very consistent with what is there in terms of their dimensions and the size and the square footage of the lot. In some cases, they exceed what the minimum standard currently is, so they're larger than what's currently platted right now. What they're asking for the flexibility on in those 3 different pods, which you can't get with the existing zoning district, would be the flexibility and the setbacks to build different styles of those homes on those individual lots. The advantage of the PUD over other zoning designations would be the PUD allows more restrictions from the city to monitor and regulate the number of homes that they're presenting. So before you all this evening, you have a copy of the MOU for this development. The applicant had a slide up there that said they want to build 130 Whitetail Run Phase 2 lots. They've defined how many of these individual lots they want to put in each phase. That's the benefit of the PUD, is that they can build no more, they can build or they can build less than that. But that's what their standard is for the development. Any other zoning district like an R1.5 or an R1P or a R1, as long as it meets what those minimum standards are, they can do any type of configuration. They can come back with a plan at a later date that shows these lots now over here. The advantage of the PUD is that when they request the zoning, it's with the exact development that you have in front of you this evening. So the residents know exactly what's there and what it has to be. There's very limited abilities to modify that over time without reopening this case for more review by P&Z and by the city council. That's the advantage of the PUD versus other conventional zoning districts that we have defined in our zoning code.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Zerg, did you have something to add?
Chairman. I would simply note in prior applications, there's been an opportunity for the developer or their representative to provide some response to the comments made from representatives of the public. There may be appetite for the commission to consider that as well. Sure. And I want to follow up to, there was the question, and because it came up from comments from the neighbors regarding the homes association, if they exclude themselves from further expansion, that is absolutely their right to do so. Obviously, the amenities that would be included within future phases would not be available to the original phase if that was the case. They would only have to make a distinction enough for the Secretary of State's naming of their homes association to distinguish between one versus the other. I can tell you, for example, in Lee Summit, you've got the Oaks Ridge Meadows, which is Oaks Ridge Meadows Association, Plat 1, Plat 2, Plat 3, Plat 4, Plat 5, all of them standalone separate homes associations, which is very, very similar naming.
So from an architectural control perspective, they're unrelated. That's was what I was.
Yes,
Yep, got
that's
it.
accurate.
I guess, yeah, as Mr. Zer stated, if the applicant has any particular items that have been brought up during the comment, I would welcome you to address those if you want, and that might help answer some of the commission member questions before they get answered, or asked, rather.
Well, thanks for the time and coming back and asking. You know, one thing I think would be a good example for you guys that's very visible to go see is if you think of Creekmore. Think of Creekmore on the east side where Clover and Hive is building their new product. With a base zoning R1P, Clover and Hive product on the east could have been built on the west, directly next to the two-story home or whatever it would have been. And you can start to think through the architectural styles of how dissimilar those would have been if there weren't areas and categories kind of built. And so when we think of a land plan in this use, and the reason we're here for the PUD is because we think it is important enough to do just like Creekmore did. Identify areas of houses that can have similar character, similar style, similar sizes, put them in areas that have similar setbacks, similar amenities, and similar types of users, and then allow another opportunity of housing type in a different area. So I think as you think through Creekmore, I think that's a very good example of exactly what we're trying to create with our PUD here, is that there are too many houses in there to allow the flexibility to build a phase of 60, 80, 100 lots and allow any home to be built in any location, because it then creates a dissimilar development of the community. It'll stale the community out, it'll stall it out. Building one of the same product over and over and over, we've found over the years of doing development of large scale, you got to build something different because you have more of a pool of buyers if you can create community areas where, just if you think about it, in the Clover and Hive product or in our villa type product, that will be a similar type user. You know, it's probably not going to be the kids. It's probably not going to be the family unit. But if you go over to the Summit or the Whitetail Phase 2, we believe that would be more family. You'd have kids, you'd have friends and pieces that would go together. So as we think through it, I think that Creekmore is a great example as we think through the process of what we're trying to do here. Our amenity is not going to be a golf course and a lake. We have the parkland that's going to get developed into whatever fashion we have, and we have a number of trails and other amenities inside of it. And I think then the other thing that needs to get talked about is one of the residents talked about the 1,400 square foot slab. You know, just as David said, there is no limitation in the city right now of any lot, any home can get built. None of what we showed you is saying that we're going to go build 1,400 square foot slab on any one of them. At the neighborhood meeting, the question was asked, are we going to restrict and say there are no slabs? We're not going to say that. I don't know that there are many slabs getting built in the city or in the metro, but they may. But it just may be the same as that someone could go build one in Creekmore. Someone could go build one in any subdivision lot that you have out there today. So the house representations that we showed are what we expect will get built out there. And again, it's the idea, it's the character, it's the quality that we believe is necessary and is available in that community, in that area, that's going to be consistent with what exists out there, and then another opportunity to develop that area. So, yeah, I think, like I said, I think from our perspective as we've looked at this, and like I said, David can attest to this, we've laid this out many, many times, keeping one consistent zoning district of like an R1 or R1P, in our opinion, does not do justice to what this 185 acres needs. If we can do a land plan with a PUD, isolate areas, isolate house types, isolate styles that are going to go in each of those, we think this community can thrive and get completed. And so I think the only other one that would be mentioned in there is that, you know, that there was a list, and we can go back to them, of what Salia has done. They have gone in and done developments. They have gone in and developed well over 500 lots throughout the over area. I mean, I can go get a number and account for you, but it's thousands of types of homes, lots, commercial and industrial. So you have a developer that has the state power, that has the financial security to get the project done. And so I think that's all the ones I think I saw or thought of, unless you guys have another one that I missed on there.
Anybody have any? Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
So again, I'm kind of trying to get my head around the difference between R1 and PUD. So other than the setbacks being different, if the R1, if you were the developer and the R1 stayed at a 10-foot setback, your architectural design could be almost about anything if you fit it within that footprint of the 10-foot setback. Am I correct?
Correct.
So the PUD actually gives the city and you guidance on how that is going, the final appearance is going to be in a more controlled environment, even though the setbacks might be a little narrower, of which we have in the city in some areas. But the R1 designation really allows for a larger variety of home builds if that developer so chooses, as long as they stay within that 10-foot setback, correct?
Yeah, and I would probably even add that in our opinion, I would say that a PUD allows flexibility for us to create the rules, but then the rules are established for each zone that are residential related, that then the city has the ability to come in and hold up the new rules for whatever they are in each of those phases, versus, like I said, in an R1, there's just a blanket across the 100, you know, the full 185, the full 500 lots have one rule across the entire piece. We're gonna create zones and areas that have still R1 rules as far as it is a single family home. It will meet all of your R1 criteria with the exceptions of side yards or front yards or, you know, whatever it may be in those specific lot areas. But essentially it's still an R1 zone property, but we have more restrictions, I would say, that are just specific to what we believe are needed to get the development to be successful.
And you're not asking for more lots than what was originally platted. You're actually staying within those confines of the number of lots, correct?
I think we're actually one less than the original plan.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the original staff report, the original Whitetail Run under the R1 zoning district had a total of 565 lots. 60 of those had been built in the phase one, meaning 505 homes were left to be built in the subdivision. They're proposing 503, so 2 less lots than what was originally approved for this piece of land. So that was one of the comments, that there were 40 to 50 more homes in this subdivision. We were kind of reviewing our application this morning and talking about the PUD. Those would be things if an application came forward to drastically change the overall development. If they started putting in 100 more lots than what Whitetail Run was supposed to be, the PUD wouldn't be very favorable for the city or city in general. So we'd look at that application a lot different. This was one of the first applications, as Matt mentioned, that came forward that respected the original development of the Whitetail Run. They're asking for the variation in the setbacks, but the lot sizes, the layout is all generally the same as what Whitetail Run was originally supposed to be. There was obviously some concerns on the home types, and staff did some research on kind of the sizes and what was permitted in Whitetail Run. But I kind of reiterate my point before, the city doesn't really restrict what the home looks like or the size of the home. We can define the box that Mr. Slitch was talking about with the setbacks, generally what can be built in there. In this case, with the setbacks being reduced, that box is actually bigger than what the R1 zoning district would allow. It means in theory, you could build a bigger home on these lots than you would be allowed to in the R1 zoning district. I can't speak for what those homes will look like or what that will be, but the point is the reductions in the setbacks only increases the buildable area on the lot, meaning the potential for more square footage for a home. But again, in any zoning district or any subdivision, the city doesn't say it has to be a 2,000 square foot home with a 3-car garage. That's not a regulation that exists in the city. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Piggybacking on that and kind of hitting on what you just said there at the end, we're generally talking about with an R1 basically having, just to kind of keep things simple, math-wise, like a 10 by 10 lot. And by doing the PUD and reducing that, you're in a sense expanding the size of the box or the size of the home that can be built on the lot. So by doing this, we're actually allowing them more flexibility in the types of homes they're building. So to his point, they can have a better variety, and that those could end up being larger homes than an R1 would have actually required them to build if we do pass this.
Correct. That is correct. One other thing I wanted to mention, the reason the city looks at this variety of home types as a good thing in most developments would be the progression of homes in a subdivision. You know, I might purchase a home in the Whitetail Summit or a new home buyer there. Most homeowners in Raymore or residents really identify themselves. This is something I learned when I first started. They're really tied to their subdivision. I live in Whitetail. I live in Creekmore. I live in Alexander Creek. That's usually what residents tell me when I pick up the phone and talk to them. So by doing these different types of homes, it allows your residents to stay in the neighborhood. You might buy a smaller home in the villas, and then you have 2 kids, and you move up into the larger homes in Whitetail Run in the phase 1 or phase 2. But the point I wanted to bring up is the comment on the slab homes. We don't regulate that anywhere. You can build a slab home in any neighborhood in the city. The reason that we kind of support that concept is the city, the commission's familiar, the city was recognized in 2018 as a community for all ages. We get a lot of, if you look at Morning View, the Morning View subdivision, those are all slab-on-grade homes. They're a little bit smaller, but those homes don't stay on the market for more than a couple days because of how in demand that type of single-family, main floor living is desired. We have a lot of 2-story homes in the city. We have a lot of single-story homes in the city. So this plan provided a good option that met each of those different products we have elsewhere in the city, all in one single neighborhood. But I just wanted to point that out because we did get recognized as that community for all ages for a lot of the code requirements and initiatives that the city has done. Housing is a big piece of that to ensure that we have housing types for people of all ages. But that kind of lends itself to this variety of home types and different buyers, different residents in the future that might be looking for a home in Whitetail or somewhere else in Raymore. What I can add, just maybe a spot for the commission to look in reference to the PUD versus the conventional zoning. The R1 district is regulated 100% by this book here in front of me. If it meets those standards, it's more or less ministerial because they meet what is defined by the city in this book. The PUD is regulated by this book, but also the MOU that you have in front of you this evening. And what I wanted to point out is on page 3 of that is the bulk and dimensional standards table. What Matt was kind of mentioning is that they have defined that the Whitetail Run phase 2 lots, those are going right here, and there's 130 of those lots. That equates to a certain density for that specific unit in the subdivision. That same thing exists for the other 2 lot types in there, but it's all regulated by this agreement that this applicant will be required to sign if this goes through the process that the builders in the subdivision will have to abide by as they purchase phases of the subdivision. So I just wanted to point out that's another bulk difference is that the conventional zoning that the city has, it's all within the Unified Development Code. Those are all spelled out for the applicants to follow, very general requirements. The PUD allows the city to take those requirements, put them in this agreement, and then take other things that we want to regulate those, i.e. the density, the phasing, the amenities, and anything that they're proposing to do with the subdivision, this agreement holds them to that. The one thing that we heard from, I don't know how many of those residents still live in Whitetail Run right now, but the lack of a pool. That subdivision was originally supposed to have a pool. They built the first phase and it never got built. We hear that a lot, and probably 3 or 4 other subdivisions that were supposed to have amenities, and the developer came in, built a handful of lots and never delivered on those amenities. That was the basis for our conversation with this applicant of, hey, maybe include a pool and let the residents take it, access that, because we've heard that they want one of those. Turns out, that went a different direction, but the point is they're providing a pool now for their residents, and because it's an amenity that they proposed, they have to provide that. The city dictates when that gets built, which phase it gets built in addition to all the other amenities that they have proposed. So as I'm reading through the MOU, I just wanted to point out some of the other advantages that you asked for in terms of that PUD.
Any other, yeah, Mr. Faulkner? Or is this for
Yeah,
applicant or for city?
Well,
Or,
you can stay.
Okay.
It's ultimately, I think it's both of you. Just a couple of small details in the MOU. So this would actually be also on page 3 of the MOU, which is page 34 of our packet this evening. 3A, maximum allowable density. It says density in the PUD shall not exceed 503 dwelling units per acre, or a total of 2.71 dwelling units.
We don't intend to build that.
I would really like it if those are the right numbers, if they were in the correct order.
So it
The
would
other
be,
thing, really minor.
hang on, Mr. Zer would like to.
so the
Mr. Zer.
correction for that would be a density in the PUD shall not exceed 503 dwelling units or a total number of 2.71 dwelling units per acre.
That would sound great to me.
Yeah.
And I think Mr. Slish as well. Okay, also, this would be page 38 of the staff report, whatever page of the, so this has to do with street names, and I think it would probably get fixed eventually. Okay, this is down under pedestrian improvements, 2B. It says Elk Drive Street, and I don't think that's right either, but very minor. That's all I had.
I'll just note, those corrections will be made. Those were an oversight.
And it's a
on
draft.
The draft,
I know
but
the MOU's draft.
those will be made before this proceeds forward to city council based on, depending on tonight's outcome.
Any other questions, Mr. Faulkner? Any other members of the commission have any questions for the city staff or the applicant? Yes,
Good.
please.
Yeah, on the staff report, page 3, the chart talks about the building coverage. I think those are all supposed to be percentages, so that might be a typo as well. And I guess maybe a question for Matt would be, so I think the crux of the request to go from R1 to this PUD is because there is a concern that there isn't enough of a demand for the one-size-fits-all R1, and so we wanted to have some variety, because if I'm understanding correctly, because we don't know that there's enough like market demand for just one type. Is that kind of, and if that's so, how do you know, how have you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, so I think the easiest one would be, as one of the residents said, that the 5-foot side yard would be way too small. I can find you a dozen people that would tell you they absolutely love it, like my father, who no longer wants to mow a yard and would touch as little grass as possible. It's just the simple process as you do development. The old school way was we would go in and do 560 lots, identically the same, find a different builder. The builder would build a different house, and so the architecture, they look different, and that's what would sell, was the opinion. But as you start to notice and observe the developments that stalled out, it was those developments. If you look at Creekmore and identify the different phases and types of development within that community and start to identify that, the Clover and Hive product on the east side or some of the Edgewater stuff on the east side starts to grow and get some momentum. Some of the stuff on the west side, when the economy started going the other way, the higher price houses started slowing, but the other ones continued to go. And so it's just through being the development. We've been doing this for 20 years of doing developments and working our way through processes and finding that there is no longer a one-size-fits-all for a large type project. As David said, this will be probably one of the largest, probably the second largest PUD that you guys have ever seen in Raymore. trying to build one specific product in that area, there's just not enough of a pool mass. So why not build something that you can have 3 different product varieties? So now I'm finding 3 different buyer pools to come in. And so then during different times of the seasons of people's lives, they'll be in those different categories. Some of them may never be in some of those categories, but it provides an opportunity to not only, as David said, buy some different product, but also grow and live in a community by itself. You know, so a lot of cities and communities find themselves enjoying the area where they live because your kids have friends, you meet the neighbors and you enjoy them, and maybe you just outgrew the house. Well, you don't want to move across town, but you can move 3 streets over, and all of a sudden you have a different housing opportunity. And so that's where we're finding is that if you look at a larger development community, the differentiation of areas is the way to make it survive and thrive, short-term and long-term, because then people have, you know, the desire to keep things up and keep their home values going well because it's something that they've enjoyed and feel responsible for.
I have a follow-up, but are you about to? Okay. So then my next question, and I'm looking through the Good Neighbor meeting notes, and I'm looking through some of the concerns, and it seems like to me some of those concerns have been addressed in the presentation that we're seeing tonight that maybe they didn't see at the meeting last month or whatever. Was one of the considerations to try to get, I guess, this phase 2, leave it as close to R1 as possible so that way anyone directly butted up against it they would almost not notice a difference? And if so, what is it possible to just go ahead and keep all the setbacks and stuff in this PUD exactly the same as an R1? Do we try to make the math come out on that okay, or?
Yeah, so what we actually did is everything in yellow is Whitetail 2 that we're calling it.
Yep.
Those lots are all of equal or larger size to what, I mean, if you go look at the Whitetail 1 phase, and I have it up if we want to see the lot sizes.
But even like the 10-foot.
Yeah, the only one that I would suggest to you is that 10-foot side yard does nothing as far as, you know, when we actually reduce the side yard, I actually allow a larger build box to make a larger house fit on that same size lot.
Okay.
But as we see in any development side of it, like I say, the 10-foot side yard is something that I would suggest City of Raymore is probably the one and only 10-foot side yard subdivision, or city with that requirement. Every city has something in the 7 to 8 foot range, and the purposes are it's an unusable dead space. You know, so typically on your side yard, you don't do much for landscaping. You don't do much for, you know, you mow as you walk through it. You put up a fence with a gate or something outside of it. So by allowing the reduction in the side yard, like I say, the lot areas will be similar. The lot widths are similar. We actually have a larger lot depth of like 130 feet, I think is what we restricted in there. So we actually increased the lot depth because what we're finding now is people not only want the rear deck or patio, but they want it covered. And so in order to cover it, we're adding an extra 10 feet on the back of the house to give it that room.
Okay.
So the only thing I'm asking for in that area is that we reduce the side yards. And like I said, from our opinion, that only does a better opportunity to build a larger scale home because you have more of a build box width.
Okay.
So I would ask not to do that just because I don't think that 10-foot side yard does anything to the value, the style, or the quality of that zoning. Just
It might not, but it just might make people feel like it's the same. Even if it's of no value to you, they might see it as 20 feet just got shrunk down to 14 between homes, right? And so I just didn't know if that was even mathematically a logistical option for.
Yeah, I would tell you that from our perspective, you know, as you look at, like I say, I think, and I would of the opinion that land planning is more of an active, you know, design process now. Used to be we throw lots out there and put pieces to it. I would tell you that if someone wants that 10-foot side yard in the area where I've reduced it down to 7, they can still have it. They can still build a house with a 10-foot side yard. They can do whatever they want and keep the separation whatever they want.
I understand.
But it allows us the opportunity to continue to vary house styles and pieces of it to fit in those lots.
Okay. Thanks for pointing that out.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Zur.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Just want to, again, reaffirm there's been a lot of information that's already been provided this evening. Obviously, you're going to continue to receive information until there's a motion and a vote on this matter. I continue to be somewhat of a broken record and have been for a while. There is provisions within the staff report, and I want to make sure and direct you back to page 5, the findings of fact. You'll have 10 different areas of consideration for your findings of fact in making the determination on the planning change that's being recommended this evening. Again, taking that into account, the development agreement that's also being as part of this evaluation. So happy to continue answering questions for you. Just want to make sure and direct the commission back to, hey, this is what we need to prove up in order to justify or to evaluate this application before you.
Very good, thank you. Any members of the commission have any additional questions or information that they'd like to gather? If not, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Chairman,
Sir?
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the staff proposed findings of fact in forward case number 24013, Whitetail Run PUD, and preliminary plan to the City Council with recommendation of approval, subject to the 2 outlined conditions in our packet.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Arquilla, second by Commissioner Smith, for the Planning and Zoning Commission to accept the staff proposed findings of fact in forward case 24013, Whitetail Run PUD, and preliminary plan to the City Council with a recommendation of approval, including the 2 outlined conditions. Any discussion, any further discussion of this topic? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that's 6. Opposed? And abstentions? Okay. That will pass, 6-0-1. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
If I could, just real quick, out of the respect for the neighbors that are here, just
Please.
a reminder that the recommendation is to proceed forward to City Council. That meeting is currently scheduled for Monday night, November 25th. Just wanted to reiterate that for any folks that are here this evening.
Thank you, sir. All right, so we will move along to our second item tonight, item B, case number 24018, Madison Valley Subdivision Pool and Clubhouse Site Plan.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
since I am an adjacent neighbor to Madison Valley, I'm going to recuse myself from this case.
Very good, thank you, sir. Would the applicant or the city please present the case?
There it is. I should know better by now. Good evening, Steve Warger, representing the developer 6127 Northwest Pine Ridge Circle, Parkville, Missouri. The request today is in the Madison Valley subdivision on the westerly side that would be adjacent to Sunset, taking 3 of those lots to provide a pool and parking lot for the subdivision that is now being developed, and there's actually pavement on the streets and coming forward with some lots. So we're putting this near the Sunset and that excess, and I think it's a good spot for that. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any commissioners have any questions or for Mr. Warber before we move into staff report? Nope. All right, David.
Thank you, sir. As the applicant mentioned, tonight is a site plan request for a new community clubhouse and pool for the Madison Valley subdivision. Provide a little context, I provided 2 location maps of kind of where this is supposed to be located or proposed to be located in the subdivision right off future Sunset Lane. The property currently is zoned R1.5, single-family residential district. To the north, it is R1 single-family in the undeveloped Madison Creek subdivision. To the south is professional office at Compass Health, R1 single family within the Wedgewood Meadows and Wedgewood Place subdivisions. To the east is going to be R1 single family within the existing Madison Valley subdivision, and then to the west would be R1 single family undeveloped, as well as public use at the Hawk Ridge Park facility. Some of the background on the history of this project, on October 11th of 21, the City Council approved the rezoning of the property to its current state, the R1.5 single-family district. On December 20th of 2021, the council approved Madison Valley Phase 2 preliminary plat, which is all of the currently developed and undeveloped area that the applicant is working on. The second plat of the Madison Valley, the first plat of that phase was approved on October 25th, 2005, the existing subdivision. Madison Valley Phase 2, their plat was approved on June 12th of 2023. That was 55 lots. Madison Valley third plat was approved on June 26th of 23. That was 21 additional lots. As the applicant mentioned, those streets are existing. They are currently working towards getting that infrastructure accepted. So home construction should be starting here in the near future once they get that infrastructure wrapped up. Included in the staff report are the existing dimensional standards for those lots. There were some special use conditions for swimming pools in general. Those include the requirements for fencing around the pool, as well as a locking gate. And in addition, Section 420 also provides 6 conditions for what would be private recreation facilities. So staff has included those, really just dealing with location requirements, setbacks, parking requirements, and things of that nature for those specific uses. I will note that all of those have been met under the proposed site plan. Looking at parking lot landscaping, all the landscaping has been provided within the proposed parking lot and the number of parking spaces that are provided. In terms of overall site landscaping, the number of the square footage and area of required landscaping has been provided in addition to some site trees. And then in terms of screening, activity areas that are on this subject property must be fenced and screened from the adjoining residential property, meaning the home that will be built eventually right next door to this. So screening is required along that property line where the future home is to be built. Those are met by providing vinyl fencing in addition to trees and shrubs. Access into the subdivision is provided logically off future Sunset Lane. The contractor for that project should be doing some preliminary grading for Sunset Lane in the next couple of weeks to start that project, and then hopefully under full construction by springtime of next year. The required pedestrian access has been provided from Foxglove Lane up to the principal entrance of the clubhouse and pool. I would note that signage is permitted in the form of subdivision entrance markers or monument signs, not included as part of this request or the preliminary plat or final plat, but the applicant can always submit sign permits for those proposed signs. In general, site utilities are all there. Obviously, the applicant mentioned they just recently extended those to the site in terms of water, sewer, stormwater, and street lighting. In general, I just wanted to point out this was not originally something that was proposed in the preliminary plat. There was no requirement for a pool or a clubhouse. What is required if the applicant moves forward, they've already submitted a minor replat for these 3 lots. They're going to be required to combine those into a common area tract that the HOA will own. So it does take away 3 residential lots and turns it into the common area tract. In general, staff has submitted the proposed findings of fact for your consideration, and we would recommend approval of the site plan this evening. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any commission members have any questions? Mr. Urquia?
So just kind of my understanding, just based on the picture, they're eliminating, is it three lots to create the pool? And they determined that this obviously would be more beneficial than building 3 homes on those lots.
That's correct.
Okay.
Very good. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Oh. If I could, actually, I'm sorry, I had the Post-it note right here in front of me. I did have a chance to speak with Commissioner Faulkner this afternoon. There was one mistake on the drawings that you all received this evening. They were labeled Madison Ridge or something that was not Madison Valley. So I just did want to note, I did get those revisions back today. They were not included in your packet, but the plans have been corrected.
Thank you, sir. It's almost as if he was still sitting here providing the feedback.
Do we need to note that in our motion?
I've already received the final plans. They're on my desk, so feel free to either make that a condition or not. I have received them as of this afternoon.
Okay.
Good.
Chairman.
Sir.
I'd like to make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the proposed findings of fact and approve case number 24018 Madison Valley Pool and Clubhouse site plan.
And second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kia, second by Commissioner Shanks for the Planning and Zoning Commission to accept the proposed findings of fact and approve case number 24018 Madison Valley Pool and Clubhouse site plan. Any discussion of the item? Seeing none, all in favor? That'll pass unanimously, 6-0. Thank you. Moving right along, case C. Allow Commissioner Faulkner to come on back up here. Item C, case number 24020, Parkside second final plat. Mr. Warber, welcome back, sir. I think
This time we're going to talk about Creekmore. We haven't done that in a while. So, Steve Warger, representing Cooper Land Development, Warger Associates, 6127 Northwest.
Hang on, sorry. No, this is the Parkside second final
Oh,
plat.
Parkside's first? Okay.
Parkside was first.
Okay.
Yep, and then
Okay,
Creekmore.
I'm sorry. I thought the agenda had Parkside next. Anyway, I'm here again.
We should get you a chair and you can just
I'm
sit.
here again. Okay, Steve Warger, 6127 Northwest Pine Ridge Circle, Parkville, Missouri, representing Parkside. This subdivision is located, part of the subdivision is located along Sunset on the east side. the south side adjacent to, I think it's single-family residential on the south side of it, and it's all undeveloped to the north of it. This was one of those cases where we've got the 50-foot wide homes that we presented in our PUD when we did that a while back. And it's approximately 32 lots that we're planning to develop at this point. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, sir. David?
Thank you. As the applicant mentioned, this would be the second plat within the Parkside subdivision. It's currently located at the south end of what is currently the terminus of Sunset Lane. Kind of mentioned that will be changing here in the next couple of weeks as some site work starts there. But in terms of the constructed Sunset Lane, it is at the dead end of that, just an expanded cul-de-sac to the east. Current zoning of the property is R1P, single-family plan district. To the north would be PUD within the Creekmore subdivision. To the south would be Hawkridge Park, which is public use and Parks and Recreation, as well as the R1 undeveloped Madison Creek subdivision. To the east would be R1P, the undeveloped remainder of the Parkside on the east side of that proposed subdivision. And to the west would be additional single-family plan district within the Parkside subdivision as well. Again, a little bit of the history on here in terms of Parkside. The R1P zoning designation was obtained in October of 2020. Within that same year, the council approved the preliminary plat for the Parkside subdivision. This cul-de-sac and these lot types were originally approved within that preliminary plat. The developer, Dan Carr, did submit the first Parkside first plat, Sunset Lane first plat right away, and the Parkside Park, which is the future dog park. All those plats have been submitted and approved by the city in 2023. And then most recently, on March 25th of this year, the city approved a reimbursement agreement with the developer to expedite the extension of 163rd over to North Madison. So that's nearing completion right now and provides a little better access into the subdivision. Again, provided here would be the bulk and dimensional standards for these proposed lots. Some of the requirements that will be built here: a 5-foot sidewalk will be installed on all lots within the phase as is required. A trail will eventually be constructed along the west side of Sunset Lane between 58 and 163rd. That'll be kind of at a later date as we finish Sunset Lane. As I mentioned, they're nearing the completion of that extension over to North Madison, and the construction of Sunset Lane is going to be imminent here in the next couple of weeks. Again, staff did submit our proposed findings of fact. The proposed development is generally consistent with the approved preliminary plat, and we would recommend that the the Planning and Zoning Commission approve this case and forward it to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
Thank you, sir. Any commissioners have any questions of staff or the applicant? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to dispose of this item, please.
I'll just keep things rolling, Chairman.
Please, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the proposed findings of fact in forward case number 24020, Parkside second final plat to the City Council with a recommendation of approval subject to the 2 outlined conditions in our packet.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Kia, second by Vice Chair Pfizer, for the Planning and Zoning Commission to accept the proposed findings of fact in forward case number 24020, Parkside second final plat to the City Council with a recommendation of approval, including the 2 conditions as outlined. Any final discussion of the item? Seeing none, all in favor? That'll also pass unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. All right, Mr. Warber, let's try this time.
Now we're back to Creekmore again. Sorry about that.
All right, this is item D, case number 24019, Cunningham at Creekmore, 4th final plat. Mr. Warber, sir.
Yes. Cunningham 4th is in the northeast part of the Creekmore subdivision. It'll be, Cunningham 2nd is already there. These will be your regular size lots, similar to the Cunningham 2nd lots. These will be sold to individual builders. This isn't one like the smaller lots that were built basically by one developer. So these will be individual lots to their builders that work in there most of the time. It's approximately 41 lots, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant real quick? All right, Mr. Kress. Oh, yes, sir, one more thing.
I forgot, Jody is here with Cooper Land Development.
All right, David.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Again, as the applicant mentioned, this would be the 4th plat of the Cunningham at Creekmore subdivision, located generally at Bentwater Drive and Portsmouth Lane, within the Cunningham subdivision overall. Existing zoning, again, is PUD planned unit development. Surrounding zoning generally is existing Creekmore or undeveloped Creekmore, with County Line Road abutting the north property line and various portions of the golf course or existing subdivisions around the property. Some history on the Cunningham subdivision. As I mentioned earlier tonight, the preliminary plan and MOU for Creekmore were originally approved in January of 2004. The Cunningham and Creekmore first plat was initially approved by the city in 2008. It was subsequently changed and vacated, and they made some changes, came back to the city in 2017 for the second plat, which is what is built today. I do believe all the homes have been built in the Cunningham subdivision to date. They added a community pool. The site plan for that was approved in 2017 by the commission. And then in addition, the Cunningham and Creekmore third plat was approved on February 25th of 2019. It had 40 lots and 6 common tracts. That phase actually has not been constructed yet, but was approved previously by the city. The lot standards are included here, a little bit larger at 8,400 square feet. Included in your packet on page 3 of the staff report, kind of a snapshot of what the preliminary plan had in place for this area of Cunningham. As you can see, a couple access modifications have been changed with the connections over to Madison, but in general, it's consistent with what was originally planned for this portion of Creekmore. The commission may have seen, if you've been out there, grading has already started. There's some equipment out there on site, which is permitted under the MOU. They're actively working on that project as we speak. And then in general, the alignment with the comprehensive plan always intended to be detached single-family residential homes, which is what they're proposing this evening. Staff would also recommend to the Planning and Zoning Commission that we accept the staff proposed findings in fact and also forward this case to the City Council with a recommendation approval subject to the 2 standard conditions there relative to the development agreement and the recording of the plat. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions of, yes?
David, is road conditions, like I know we've talked in previous meetings about some roads in Creekmore, just the traffic of the heavier like concrete trucks and stuff have become an issue, and with the waterways underneath water and stuff. Is this area of Creekmore a concern for that? Like, would an alternative like route from Madison for like construction access point, would something like that help, or is that not a concern for this area?
No, so we did include a provision for that. If you look on the cover of your staff report, the aerial map, you'll see Portsmouth Lane, it connects down to North Madison. That's south of what has currently been built. It's what was originally approved. It's been platted. It is not built, but there's existing right-of-way there. We did work with the applicant to determine that will be the likely construction road.
Okay.
We did want to limit construction traffic through the existing neighborhood, both as a convenience for the neighbors, but also the concerns about the truck traffic. So they have agreed to design that as a construction entrance and limit the heavy construction to that portion of the
Wonderful.
phase.
Yes, sir, Mr. Faulkner.
I think this kind of goes along with that, but if I'm understanding the phasing here, the existing phase, I believe, was called second plat. And then what you're talking about with the construction access, I believe that would be third plat. And this case tonight is fourth. So I had a concern basically from a fire department, public safety standpoint. Can I get some reassurance that third plat, or at least the road, will be complete before fourth is occupancy permits?
So within the development agreement, that spells out the conditions for the construction road. The conversation on the access actually generated from our discussion with the fire marshal, because there's a limit of how many homes can be in a subdivision without at least a second emergency access. So it's not necessarily that the permanent road will be required in order to start building homes in that subdivision or occupying them, but they do have to have that construction road as a temporary second access. That was acceptable to the fire marshal. It will not be a permanent road, at least up front. It'll be more of a gravel construction drive through that third phase that you mentioned, but it'll be for construction traffic and emergency.
Well, so fire marshal was convinced it would support the weight of a fire truck.
Correct.
And that addresses my concern. Thank you.
Excellent.
Mr. Urquilla.
And then just kind of to your point, I'm assuming that we'll then see the phase 3 to complete out, like the rendering that shows the lots by the lake and all of that. That'll come later.
Yeah, initially, and I'll let the applicant, I'm not specifically sure what the timing is for the construction of that, which is the need for that construction road, but it does look like the lakefront lots will be at a later date, probably 5th and 6th or 7th plats.
But that's still planned, correct?
Yes and no. The third plat now will probably be one of the last ones. because to be able to get the construction access back to the lakefront lots, we can't build the third, because then you're driving over the streets, and we don't have any way to get there.
No, I understand that.
And
I was
that's,
just curious.
gonna, and I know you guys adopted that, but that's gonna be more and more difficult with some of these subdivisions on how do you can't start from the front end and bring it out. So that's gonna be kind of challenging and interesting on how this all works out in other subdivisions in the future.
Any final questions for the applicant or the city staff? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Chairman, I'll just keep it rolling tonight.
Please do.
Make it simple for everybody watching. I'd like to propose a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the proposed findings of fact in forward case number 24019, Cunningham at Creekmore, fourth final plat to the City Council with a recommendation of approval, but taking in consideration the two conditions outlined in the packet.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Urquilla, second by Commissioner Shanks for the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission to accept the proposed findings of fact and forward case number 24019 Cunningham at Creekmore, fourth final plat to the City Council with a recommendation of approval, including the two conditions as outlined. Excuse me. Any final discussion of the item? Seeing none, all in favor? That'll also pass unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. All right, that will conclude our new business tonight. Mr. Zerder, City Council report.
Thank you, Chairman Wiggins. Happy to provide the City Council report for you this evening. Since your last meeting, there have been two City Council meetings. The first was on September 23rd. During the course of that meeting, there was nothing that the Commission had the opportunity to review prior to the actions of the City Council. I think the prior one may have been the CIP evaluation that was presented to you all. So the most recent one that we have is a City Council report for last night, October 14th. During the course of that discussion, there were two items that had come before you. Both of those two items for your consideration included the Timber Ridge rezoning and the Timber Ridge preliminary plat. You'd previously had the opportunity to review these back on September 17th, approving each one of them by a unanimous vote, I believe. Unanimous vote on the rezoning and a 7-1 vote on the approval of the preliminary plat. During the course of the City Council determination, both of those were approved by a vote of 5-4. Those are the two items that I'd be able to report on with regard to the City Council report from yesterday. If there are any questions, I'm happy to provide additional information. Obviously, the mayor was present for that meeting as well as Mr. Gress, and if there's any additional input they need to provide, they're welcome to do so.
Very good. Staff report, please, David.
Thank you, sir. A couple things I wanted to mention just for the month of September. I did include a monthly report in your packet. We did have 9 single-family permits that were issued last month, which was good to see for this time of year. That did include the first 3 home permits that were issued in Parkside, so that is exciting. As the commission probably knows, that was a project that was kind of up in jeopardy with the landfill. Saw a lot of delays and some stalling. So Hearthside Homes is the builder in that subdivision for those first 3 lots. They secured a 4th permit so far this month, but very nice looking home, so it's good to see Dan able to sell some of those lots now with that issue cleared up, and we'll look forward to some activity in that subdivision. Couple updates on some projects. The multi-tenant building there next to Scooters at 1830 West Foxwood Drive. As you've seen, they've got masonry block exterior framing, a lot of vertical construction going on that site. Should see some parking lot improvements there in the near future as well, which will be good to see. Relative to the Chick-fil-A right across the street, even more significant process there. At the time I wrote this report, they were just starting the concrete and asphalt improvements in the parking lot. They've pretty much finished the base layer of all that, which is good to see, and they're starting on some of their masonry block exterior facing on the property as well. In terms of the Walmart, that's a project that's been under construction for a couple months. They're currently in the rough end stage in terms of their expansion, kind of on the southwest side of that property for their grocery pickup area. And then the interior remodel, if you've been in there, you've probably been lost like myself. But they've done a nice job refreshing the inside and outside of the store. The interior remodel is kind of nearing the final stages there. And I think that would conclude my staff report. Happy to answer any questions about the department if you have any.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Gress? Oh, all right, very good. This will move us to item number 10, our public comment. As always, we welcome any members of the public. If they have any additional comments they would like to make, please come forward and do so. All right, very good. We will move to commission member comments. I'll start to my immediate left with Vice Chair Pfizer.
Okay, well, first, thanks to staff for keeping us informed and also for clarifying a lot of things tonight, because it is kind of confusing sometimes understanding the difference between the PUD and just the R1. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate people coming out and actually voicing their opinions too. I think that's always good to hear what people have to say. And you brought up the community for all ages, and I'd kind of forgotten about that, but it's like, I've been several of these meetings where people have said, why don't we have any homes without stairs? And it is really hard to find that here. So I think, you know, even though people like, oh, slab homes, I think it can be definitely something that people need and want. So I'm all for variety. So just thank you.
Mr. Faulkner?
Thanks to staff, and I think I would echo most of Commissioner Pfizer's comments.
Commissioner Smith?
Broken record. Appreciate you guys. It was a well-attended meeting. There was a lot of stuff handled tonight, so good job.
Commissioner Shanks?
Yeah, likewise. I guess, Mayor, was there in the city council meeting, was there a reason for the 4 to 5 split? I was kind of caught off guard because normally that's pretty unanimous or close to it, right?
Right, and I think from the perspective of the individuals that voted no on the particular topic, or listening to a couple of folks from the community that feel like that we are saturated with multifamily, even though duplexes are not considered multifamily under the strict definition of that. That Ward 1 in particular is kind of our commercial district. There should be, I think, a few more expectations there that there will be a more variety of housing available in those areas, more of a mixed use zone, so to speak. And the product that was being presented, I think if they'd had an opportunity from the beginning, like I was, to be involved with staff action with regard to what was initially proposed as to what was finally proposed to not only the Planning and Zoning Commission, but to the council, there would have been a little bit more assurance that the quality of the duplexes that are being built was far beyond what might have initially been offered. And the highest and best use is always what our comprehensive plan and our master growth plan look at. So I think staff brought us, with a lot of homework, a good product with regard for our consideration. The planning and zoning has a little deeper dive into those types of things, and I had hoped that the council would have too. And it's just a matter of personal opinion and feeling on that type of thing. I think findings of fact, which are both the responsibility of the city council and the Planning and Zoning Commission, may have not been truly taken into consideration. But it's just I think it was just a personal decision on their part to take a stand, so to speak, on what they felt was multifamily, when frankly I didn't, and that's why I voted yes to break the tie on that particular decision. Because I do believe that the product is a great product. I think it's another variety of homes that we have to offer here in our community. We have a long-standing relationship with the builder, and they build a good product and they stand behind it. And if you look at the product that they have provided to us in the past, they have always come through for us. In fact, the Oak Ridge Farms that was originally proposed before you were on the board, one of the stipulations that we brought up when they were trying to phase it in is that, no, come to us with a master plan on that area that you own. They did. They came through with a great master plan, and this is another product of their planning efforts that I think is going to be quite a nice, another housing option for our community.
Great, thank you. And of course, thanks to everyone else. I appreciate the emails reminding us when we're supposed to come, giving us the packets in advance. I should do a better job of reading it more thoroughly than I do, but at least I can browse and kind of skim to see what the major talking points are. So thanks for keeping us prepared.
Commissioner Kia.
As always, I appreciate all the work and effort you guys put into putting our packets together and the presentations. I'm liking the new layout as I familiarize myself with it. I'm curious what the Gold Excellence Award for our 2023 annual report consisted of. That has to be a phenomenal annual report.
Sure, I'm happy to report on that, and feel free to grab a copy. They're in the vestibule as you walk out. That was a cooperative effort with our ED director, Jordan Lee, and our communications department, and honestly, several staff members that are involved in all things development. So that was a report put together celebrating all the things we accomplished in 2023. She submitted that as part of an organization that she's part of, the International Economic Development Council, with other applicants from across the country. So it was reviewed against several other very nice projects that were similar to it. We were fortunately selected for the gold level based on that, and so we have a high standard to try and meet next year. She set the bar pretty high. But feel free to grab a copy. They're in the turnstiles out there in the lobby as you guys leave.
Awesome. Well, definitely extend my congratulations on the effort and recognition for that. And Mr. Zur, good to see you back tonight. And thank you to the rest of the commission for all your hard work. Commissioner Faulkner, always appreciate your detailed eye on our reports. Makes my job a lot easier. I can just relax knowing that you're going to find everything. So thank you.
Mayor Turnbow, sir.
Yeah, so my particular thank you to staff tonight is about the whitetail product. The initial look at that subject property and the way it was laid out was presented to the Good Neighbor meeting. There were a lot of concerns that I felt that Greengrass Investments took into consideration, modified their plan for many of the things, and worked with city staff diligently to ensure that a quality product was eventually brought before the planning and zoning, which will be forwarded to the city council. But I think that the findings of fact speak for themselves in this particular category, and will do so at the city council meeting. David, you and your team did a great job of explaining to me the differences. I thought I knew a lot of those nuances, but I think I was actually on the fence when I came into the meeting here. But doing the homework and visiting with staff on this earlier today, I realized how much work had been done to ensure the privacy of the homes that exist, maintain their property values as well, ensure that they had a quality of life that didn't change at all with additional neighbors around. And I really appreciate that extra effort that you put into that. And I'm hoping that in the future they will appreciate it as well. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Dittos, pretty much. Thank you, staff, for everything that you've done. Lots of great questions tonight. Wonderful to see lots of members of the public here. I think that we spent a lot of time covering a lot of things, and hopefully through all of the discussion helped educate some people about, this particular project and how it was designed and how PUDs work, and et cetera, et cetera. So thank you very much for everybody's attendance tonight. With that, I'd entertain a motion to dispose.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, Mr. Faulkner.
Yeah. Hang on.
Oh.
Motion.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Gress is
I had one thing I wanted to mention. We originally had a meeting scheduled for November 5th. We have no items scheduled for that. That is election day, so we'll give you the day off as long as you go vote. We do, however, have an application scheduled for the second meeting in November on the 19th. There's one application that's been scheduled there. So staff's currently reviewing that application. We'll look forward to bringing that for you to all next month.
Very good. All right. Any other things?
No?
Okay, Mr. Faulkner.
I move that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Faulkner, second by Commissioner Key to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.